I never thought an inheritance could destroy a family. When Aunt Mary passed away, I was devastated. She was the one person who had always been there for me, the one who believed in me when no one else did. She was the quiet anchor in a chaotic family, and now, her absence felt like a hole I couldn't fill. The funeral was quiet. Somber faces, awkward condolences, and the kind of heavy silence that only happens when no one knows what to say. My cousins avoided eye contact. My uncle, Richard, looked like he was already calculating something in his head. I didn't care. I wasn't thinking about money or property. I just wanted her back. After the burial, the lawyer's office called everyone in. Aunt Mary's will was to be read that same week. I didn't expect anything from it. Maybe a book or one of her knitted scarves. That was how she was, simple, humble. But when I walked into the lawyer's office and saw my entire family sitting around that long wooden table, I felt a knot form in my stomach. "Alex?" The lawyer nodded at me as I sat down. Liza, my cousin, leaned closer to her brother and whispered something, both of them smirking like they already knew what was coming. Uncle Richard sat at the end of the table, his arms folded across his chest like he was king of the room. The lawyer cleared his throat and unfolded the papers. "I, Mary Thompson, being of sound mind, do hereby bequeath." He kept reading, his voice steady, professional, but then it hit. "All of my property, financial assets, and personal belongings to my nephew, Alex Carter." The room went dead silent. "What?" Liza said, almost choking on the word. That has to be a mistake," Richard barked, slamming his fist against the table. "Read it again." The lawyer looked uncomfortable but repeated the words exactly the same way. Richard's face turned red. He glared at me like I'd just stolen something out of his pocket. "This is ridiculous. She was my sister. My sister. And you..." He pointed at me, his finger trembling. "You manipulated her. Don't think I don't know what you did." I blinked, stunned. "I didn't do anything. I didn't even know." "Oh, please." Liza cut in, her voice sharp like broken glass. "You were always sucking up to her, playing the good little boy. Guess it paid off. I loved her. I shot back. She was there for me when no one else was. I never asked for this." Richard stood so suddenly his chair screeched against the floor. "This isn't over. We're contesting this." The lawyer sighed, adjusting his glasses. "Mr. Thompson, this was her explicit wish. She made it clear, in my presence, that she wanted Alex to inherit everything. But no one listened. Not really. When the meeting ended, I left as fast as I could, my chest tight, their voices following me out the door like angry ghosts. I didn't even look back. I didn't want the house. I didn't want the money. I just wanted my family not to look at me like I'd betrayed them. That night, I sat alone in my apartment staring at the ceiling, replaying the scene in my head. Liza's disgusted sneer, Richard's rage. Even my younger cousin Brian, who usually avoided conflict, wouldn't look at me. The next day, I drove out to Aunt Mary's house. The keys had been in my pocket since the lawyer handed them to me, but I hadn't had the courage to go. When I opened the door, the familiar smell of lavender hit me. Everything was exactly as she left it. Her knitting basket by the couch, the clock ticking steadily in the hallway, the faint hum of the old refrigerator in the kitchen. For a moment, I just stood there, my throat tight. I walked through the room slowly, touching the back of the couch where I used to sit when she made me tea, glancing at the worn rug she refused to replace because it still has life in it, Alex. In her study, I found a sealed envelope with my name on it. My hands trembled as I opened it. "Alex, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I know they won't understand why I did this, but I know you. You won't waste what I've left you. You'll remember the things that matter. Please don't hate them. They're family, even when they're wrong." I sank into her chair, the letter clutched in my hands. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She'd always known exactly what to say, even from beyond the grave. I stayed there for hours, just sitting in her house, reading that letter over and over again until my eyes ached. It felt like the only piece of comfort I had left. The next few days were chaos. Richard called me twice, demanding I do the right thing and split everything. Liza sent me a long text that ended with, "You'll regret this when you have no one left." I didn't reply. I didn't know what to say that wouldn't make it worse. Instead, I focused on the house. I cleaned, repaired, and tried to make it feel alive again. Every time I fixed something, I could almost hear Aunt Mary's voice teasing me. "Finally learning to use a screwdriver, huh?" One evening, While I was in the attic sorting through boxes, I found an old family photo album. There we were, Christmases, birthdays, summer barbecues. Richard laughing. Liza grinning with frosting on her nose. Me sitting on Aunt Mary's lap. When had it all gone wrong? I traced a finger over one of the pictures and realized something then. They weren't evil. They were just hurt. And that was when my phone rang. It was Richard. For a moment I thought about ignoring it, but something in me didn't want to. I answered. He didn't yell this time. His voice was quieter. Tired. "Alex," he said. "We need to talk." I leaned against the attic wall, staring down at the photo album in my hands. "Yeah," I said. "We do." When Richard asked to meet, I didn't know what to expect. Part of me thought it was a trap, that he'd show up with papers demanding I sign everything over. But there was something in his voice on the phone. Something I hadn't heard since I was a kid. He didn't sound angry. He sounded lost. We met at a small diner just outside of town. Neutral ground. I got there early, sitting in a booth with my hands wrapped around a cup of coffee I didn't even touch. I kept watching the door until he walked in. Richard looked older than I remembered, like the last few weeks had added years to his face. He slid into the booth across from me without saying a word. For a moment, we just sat there, two strangers who used to be family. Finally, he cleared his throat. "Alex," he started, his voice low. I was out of line. I didn't say anything. I wanted to hear him out. "I was angry," he continued, staring at his hands. "Not just at you. Her. And Mary. She should have told me. She should have explained why she did it." I swallowed hard. She didn't owe us an explanation. She trusted me, that's all. Richard looked up then, and for the first time I didn't see the anger. I saw regret. "She always liked you," he said quietly. "You reminded her of herself when she was younger. Stubborn. Always trying to fix things. I think I hated you for that. I didn't know what to say to that." "I'm not asking for the house," Richard added quickly, almost defensive, like he was afraid I'd walk out. I don't want to lose my nephew too." That hit harder than I expected. I leaned back, letting out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "I don't want to lose anyone either," I admitted. He nodded, almost relieved. "Liza's still furious," Richard said with a humorless laugh. "You know her. She thinks you planned this whole thing." "Yeah," I muttered. "I've seen her texts." "She'll come around," he said. "Eventually." The conversation shifted after that. We talked about Aunt Mary, about the stupid board games she used to force us to play, about the way she made pie every Sunday even if no one visited. For the first time since the will was read, I didn't feel like I was at war with my family. When we left the diner, Richard hesitated before getting into his car. "You should come over for dinner sometime," he said. "Liza won't be happy, but we'll deal with it." "Yeah," I said. "I'd like that." I thought that was it. I thought maybe we'd start to mend things. But I was wrong. 2 days later, Liza showed up at Aunt Mary's house. She didn't knock. She stormed in like she owned the place, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. "You think one little coffee with Dad fixes everything?" she snapped before I could even say hello. I froze. "Liza, I don't..." She cut me off, jabbing a finger at me. "You stole this from us. I don't care what the lawyer says." She was manipulated. "You probably told her sob stories, made her feel sorry for you." I clenched my fists at my sides. "Liza, I didn't take anything from you. This isn't what I wanted." "Then give it back," she shouted. "Sell the house. Split the money. Do something decent for once in your life." Her words hit like a slap. "I'm not selling this house," I said, my voice firm. "This is hers. And if you can't respect that, maybe you should leave." For a second, I thought she might actually hit me. But instead, she spun on her heel and marched out, slamming the door so hard a picture frame rattled on the wall. I stood there for a long time, my chest heaving, the silence of the house pressing down on me. I wanted to scream. Instead, I picked up the photo of Aunt Mary that had nearly fallen and set it back in place. "She'd tell me to be patient," I muttered under my breath. That night, I found another letter. It was tucked into one of her old cookbooks, as if she knew I'd eventually open it. "Alex, if they fight you, don't fight back. Anger only feeds anger. Just keep the door open for them. One day, they'll walk through it." I sat there with the letter in my lap, wondering if she somehow knew exactly how bad things would get. Maybe she had. She always understood this family better than anyone. The next day, I called Richard, She came by, I said flatly. Yeah, he sighed. I figured she might. Just give her time, Alex. She's hurting. Hurting doesn't give her the right to tear me apart. I muttered. No, he agreed softly. It doesn't, but don't give up on her. Please. I didn't answer right away. Finally, I said, I'll try, and I meant it, because deep down I wanted my family back, even if they didn't want me right now. The days after Liza's outburst were quiet, almost unnervingly so. No angry texts, no surprise visits, no late-night calls from Richard trying to play mediator. I should have been relieved, but the silence only made me uneasy. I spent most of my time fixing up Aunt Mary's house. It helped me think. I repainted the living room, replaced the broken window in the kitchen, and even mowed the lawn for the first time in years. With every nail hammered and every wall scrubbed, the house felt a little less like a battleground and a little more like home. One evening, while I was cleaning out the garage, I heard a car pull up. My stomach tightened. I stepped outside and saw Liza standing at the end of the driveway, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Liza, I said cautiously. I'm not here to fight, she replied flatly. Can we talk? I didn't believe her, not entirely, but I nodded. Yeah, sure. We sat on the front porch, the summer air heavy between us. For a while, neither of us spoke. Finally, Liza broke the silence. I found out she changed the will 2 years ago, she said. I froze. 2 years. She nodded. Dad told me. I guess I always assumed it was recent. I thought maybe you talked her into it after she got sick. But 2 years? She was still healthy then. I looked at her, trying to read her face. Liza, I didn't know either. I didn't even find out until the reading. I know, she said, her voice quieter this time. That surprised me. She loved you, Liza continued. I guess I should have seen it. You were always her favorite. She hesitated, her hands twisting in her lap. I thought I'd get something. Not the money, not even the house, just, I don't know. Something to show she cared about me, too. My chest tightened. For the first time, I didn't see her as the cousin who hated me. I saw her as someone who was grieving. She did care, I said. You know that. She never stopped talking about you. About how smart you were, how much potential you had. She was proud of you, Liza, even if she didn't say it enough. Liza's eyes glistened, but she quickly blinked it away. You sound like her, she muttered. I smiled faintly. Guess she rubbed off on me. We sat in silence again, but this time it wasn't hostile. It was peaceful. Look, I said finally, I'm not giving up the house, but that doesn't mean you can't be part of it. It's still hers. And if you ever want to come by, if you want to remember her with me, you can. Liza stared at me for a long time, like she was trying to decide if I was serious. Finally, she nodded. Maybe, she said softly. It wasn't much, but it was something. That night, after she left, I sat in Aunt Mary's study and opened another one of her letters. This one wasn't addressed to me. It was simply marked, for whoever needs it. Family will hurt you, sometimes worse than strangers. But forgiveness isn't for them, Alex. It's for you. Don't let anger be the only thing they remember. I ran my thumb over the ink until the words blurred. I didn't know how she always seemed to know exactly what I needed, but she did. The next morning, I called Richard. She came by. I told him. Yelled at you again? He asked, half joking. Not this time. We talked. He was quiet for a second. Good. That's good. Maybe you should come by too, I suggested. We could, all sit down. Try to remember what it's like to be a family. Richard laughed softly, almost bitterly. You think we can fix this over coffee? Maybe not, I admitted. But we could start. There was a pause. Then he said, all right, I'll bring dessert. Your aunt used to make me eat pie until I couldn't move. Seems fitting. When I hung up, I looked around the house. For the first time since the will was read, it didn't feel like I was alone in it. For the first time, it felt like Aunt Mary might have been right. Maybe we weren't as broken as I thought. Richard showed up that Saturday carrying a bakery box with 3 slices of pie and a look that said he wasn't entirely sure this was a good idea. Liza came too, though she didn't speak much as she stepped into the house, her gaze darting around like she was seeing it for the first time. I'd spent the morning cleaning every corner, making the place feel warm, inviting, like Aunt Mary would have wanted. Smells like her, Richard said quietly as he stepped into the kitchen. I'd been baking cinnamon rolls the way she used to on weekends. She left the recipe, I told him. He smiled faintly, and for a brief second, I saw a glimpse of the older brother I used to know before life and bitterness got in the way. We sat around the old oak table. No lawyers, no accusations, just the three of us, and the house that had once been our safe place. Liza didn't say much at first. She pushed her pie around her plate, her shoulders stiff. But then, out of nowhere, she glanced at the framed photo of Aunt Mary on the wall and said, "She would have hated this. Us fighting." Richard sighed. "Yeah, she'd probably be yelling at all of us right now." That made Liza laugh. A small laugh, but it was real. And just like that, the tension cracked a little. We talked. Not about the house. Not about the will. Just about her. About the way Aunt Mary used to sing off-key while she cooked. About the time she tried to build a birdhouse and accidentally glued her fingers together. About how she could never keep a plant alive no matter how hard she tried. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something I hadn't let myself feel since the funeral. Peace. After dinner, Liza lingered in the living room, looking at the shelves full of Aunt Mary's books. "She really read all these?" she asked. "Twice," I said. "Some of them 3 times. Liza reached out and pulled one down at random, flipping through the pages. She found a note tucked inside. A little piece of paper in Aunt Mary's handwriting. It wasn't addressed to anyone, just a simple line. "Whoever finds this, stop frowning. Go eat pie. Life's too short." Liza stared at it for a moment before handing it to me. "She really left notes everywhere, didn't she?" I smiled. "Yeah, guess she knew we'd need them." When Richard stood to leave later that night, he clapped a hand on my shoulder. This was good, Alex," he said. "We should do it again." Liza didn't say anything, but as she walked out, she paused in the doorway. "Next time," she muttered, "I'll bring the pie." I stood there long after they'd gone. The house quiet again, but not empty. For the first time, it felt like maybe Aunt Mary's plan was working. That night, I opened one more of her letters. "Alex, forgiveness isn't a moment. It's 100 little choices over and over. Make them, even when it hurts." I sat there in the soft glow of the kitchen light, and I realized something. Maybe Aunt Mary didn't just leave me this house. Maybe she left me the only thing that could fix our family. The next week, the house didn't feel so heavy anymore. Richard called every other day, usually with some excuse, asking if I needed tools or if I remembered how to make Aunt Mary's chili. He never came out and said it, but I think he just wanted to stay connected. And Liza, well, she surprised me the most. One evening, she showed up unannounced. No shouting, no accusations. Just Liza, standing awkwardly on the porch with a pie in her hands. "You said next time," she muttered when I opened the door. I stared at her for a second before stepping aside. "Come in." We ate in the kitchen, no big speeches, no apologies. But she didn't glare at me anymore. Instead, she told me about work, about how her boss drove her crazy, and how she'd been thinking about switching careers. I listened. I didn't judge. And for a little while, it felt almost normal. After dinner, she wandered into the living room and looked at Aunt Mary's old armchair. "I used to sit there when I was little," she said quietly. "She'd read to me for hours." "She read to me too," I said, "even when I was way too old for it." Liza smiled faintly, and for the first time it wasn't bitter. She never treated us like we had to compete, you know? We just made it that way ourselves. "Yeah," I admitted. She looked at me then, and there was no anger in her eyes, just tired sadness. "I miss her." "I do too," I said softly. We didn't talk about the house. We didn't need to. Later that week, Richard came by as well. We sat in the backyard, the three of us, eating burgers while cicadas hummed in the trees. It was strange, almost surreal, how quickly things were shifting. We laughed. Actually laughed. When Richard told the story of the time Aunt Mary accidentally set the toaster on fire and blamed faulty wiring for years. And for a moment, I realized Aunt Mary was still here. Not in the house, not in the letters, but in us. In the way we remembered her. That night, after they left, I found another note hidden under a drawer liner in the kitchen. "Alex, one day they'll stop fighting you. Don't push. Just keep the table set for them." And I had. The next Sunday they came back, this time without hesitation. Liza brought salad, Richard brought wine. It was clumsy, imperfect, but it was a start. We talked about Christmases past, about vacations we'd never taken, about the stupid little things that only families remember. At one point, Liza looked around the table and said, "You know, she'd be happy, seeing us like this." Richard raised his glass. "To Aunt Mary," he said. We all clinked our glasses together, and for the first time since the funeral, I didn't feel the weight of loss pressing down on me. I felt hope. When they left that night, Liza hugged me. It was quick, awkward, but real. "Thanks for not giving up on us," she said. "I couldn't," I replied. "She wouldn't let me." As I closed the door behind them, I realized Aunt Mary had been right all along. Forgiveness wasn't one big gesture. It was these moments, these small steps, until one day you looked around and realized the wounds weren't bleeding anymore. And for the first time in a long time, the house didn't just feel like it was mine. It felt like it was ours. 2 weeks later, I decided to do something Aunt Mary would have loved. I sent out a group text to Richard and Liza. "Sunday, dinner. No excuses." Richard replied with a thumbs up. Liza sent a single word. "Fine." By Sunday afternoon, the house smelled like roast chicken and fresh bread. I'd even dug out Aunt Mary's old tablecloth, the one with tiny embroidered flowers she'd sworn brought good luck to every meal. When Richard and Liza arrived, there was no tension, no awkward silence. They just came in like they belonged there. Richard handed me a bottle of wine. Liza carried a tray of brownies. "Don't burn anything," Richard teased. "Not unless you start talking politics," I shot back. Liza laughed, and the sound filled the kitchen in a way I didn't know I'd missed until now. We sat down at the table. We talked about everything: work, neighbors, stupid TV shows. Richard complained about his boss. Liza admitted she was applying for a new job. I told them about the raccoon that had been raiding the trash cans out back, and Richard swore he'd come over and teach it some respect, which made Liza nearly choke on her wine. And then, without really meaning to, we started talking about Aunt Mary again. "Remember her birthday parties?" Liza said. "She'd always make that ridiculous cake with way too much frosting." Richard grinned. "Yeah. And then she'd act surprised when half of it slid off because she didn't use enough icing glue." We all laughed, and for the first time it wasn't bittersweet. It was warm. After dinner, we stayed at the table. No one rushed to leave. Richard leaned back in his chair, looking around the house. "You've done good with this place," he said. "Thanks," I replied. He hesitated. I was angry, you know, when I found out about the will. I thought she was punishing us, or I don't know. But sitting here now, I get it. She wanted this. She wanted us to be here, together." Liza nodded, quiet but firm. "She knew we'd fight, but she also knew you wouldn't give up on us. Alex, you're stubborn like her." I smiled. "Guess I learned from the best." Richard raised his glass, and this time it wasn't just a toast to Aunt Mary. It was a toast to us, to what we'd been and what we might still be. "To family," he said. "To family," Liza echoed. We clinked glasses, and for the first time in what felt like forever, there was no weight, no bitterness, just us. Later that night, after they left, I walked into Aunt Mary's study. There was one last letter I hadn't opened yet. It was tucked deep in the bottom drawer, sealed with her careful handwriting. "Alex," it read, "if you're reading this, it means you didn't give up. I knew you wouldn't. This house isn't just wood and paint. It's the table where you'll break bread, the walls that will hear laughter again, and the roof that will hold you all when the storms come. I left you this house because you were the only one who'd remember that it wasn't just mine. It was ours. Now it's yours. Take care of them, Alex, and forgive them when they stumble, because one day, they'll forgive you too." I folded the letter and sat there for a long time, staring at her handwriting through blurry eyes. The next morning, I called Richard and Liza. "Next Sunday," I said. "Same time." Richard laughed. "You're really gonna make this a thing, huh?" "Yeah," I replied. "I think Aunt Mary would want it that way." And for the first time, I didn't just feel like I'd inherited a house. I'd inherited my family back.